All right. Well, welcome everyone to our presentation on caring for one, caring for all, developing resilient and positive school cultures, even in tough times. And I'm going to even add to that, not only even in tough times, but especially in tough times. We are in tough times, as we've heard in the conference up until this point. And hopefully, from our presentation, you'll walk away with some tools that will be helpful to you in your individual situations, whether that's individually you take that, or to your school, or to your district, and however that might work, or further, even to advocacy. I know we have some advocates in this conference as well. So I'm Lynette Johnson, and I'm going to start. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I'm going to give you some perspective on the individual level, or what we would call for this presentation the micro level. Ammon will go next. He's going to talk about how that impacts on the school level, and then Vivian is going to talk about how that has worked in a district level. And you have all of our bios to look at from there. So okay, we may go ahead and go to the next slide. So, kind of what our agenda looks like today is Ammon and I are going to be talking about theory and application, individual school level, as I said, and then Vivian's going to talk about very practical application with the school and district level. And we hope to have about a 10 or 15-minute question and answer period at the end, and we're super glad to be with you today. Go ahead. So, starting, we've all been on the airlines, maybe more so before COVID than now, but we all know that in an airline safety brief, it comes to this. And the next slide, oxygen. It's so vital to put the oxygen on ourselves. And remember what they say in those safety briefings: first put it on yourself, and then put it on your children, elderly, disabled. So, go to the next slide, please. What we know from the oxygen safety briefing from the airlines is that when we're first giving the oxygen to ourselves, we're more able to help others. So if you think about that as a metaphor for what we're going to be discussing today, caring for the one, we may be the one, the first one to put that oxygen on ourselves. And then that helps us to go forward and care for all. With our oxygen on, we're more able to care for those around us. And we like to call this not only just resilience, but a fierce resilience, a heartfelt, fierce heart resilience that we're talking about today. Go ahead. So, a little bit more about me that isn't in my bio. I was in Germany when COVID started, and I was in lockdown in a country that was not my own. And I know that each of us have perspectives on that, being in different states and so on. But basically, I could do two things, and I was there at the risk of fines. You could go and exercise in nature, or go and get food. And actually, the third thing would be you could go get medical care. But I bring that perspective to you today. I share this perspective with you today. Resilience became not only something that I teach, which I've been doing for a lot of years, but something that I absolutely needed, desperately needed, and lived by. Next slide. Ammon, I'm going to let you pull out a little piece on this and what you found and the perspective that you're going to be bringing to our presentation.
Great, thank you. So each of us in education experienced different but similar challenges coming in March. We had a governor soft closure, and this caused a lot of stress across all of our stakeholders. Most importantly, as the summer came, we, as an administration and you doing many surveys from our parents, discovered we needed to progress forward and how we would go about doing that. Currently, I think what we're going to talk mostly about is our current state, and you in your respective areas and schools are experiencing variations of that. And currently, in our area, we're a small island inside of a large district, and the state and the local health department and officials have basically yo-yoed their decision back and forth, while our school has tried to maintain a very consistent, well, albeit not ideal, but a very consistent process. And what we know right now is it will continue. And our teachers definitely and our students definitely needed some sort of intervention. And that's what we bring today is our experience with that.
Thank you, Evan. So, for the purposes of this, we're talking about resilience as the capacity to overcome the negative effects of setbacks and the associated stress on performance. Fierce, I made mention of this, but it's heartfelt, powerful intensity. So we're talking about this fierce resilience. It's heartfelt, and you all know it. We all know it. Each of us live it every day. Sometimes it takes fierceness just to get out of bed and start that day ahead. Cognitive reframing is a way of looking at experiences and events and finding meaning in them and shifting our thoughts on those things. So go ahead. So, from the headlines, here are a few headlines from our state. Um, COVID, coronavirus, and 13 Jordan school districts on emergency meeting agenda after, these are common in each of our states. And what this has caused for us, go ahead, is it's changed the world. It's shattered what we once knew, our perceptions, how we do day to day business. We're on a conference right now virtually, just by way of example. Next. Uh, we have words like Zoom, Attendify, and it changes every day, always changing. Go ahead. So caring for one, caring for all. What do we do to heal? How do we keep ourselves safe and well, physically and emotionally? Go ahead. These are questions we're going to address. Uh, so a lot of times it's not only just taking care of myself, and part of that putting the oxygen on myself is looking at programs, community programs, grants, state and federal programs, the CARE grant, the Ammon, you have another one that we have in the state of Utah, and I think other states might have these too. Do you want to address that?
Yeah, along with the CARES grant, our governor did what's called the GEARS, and it follows the same timeline of all expenditures have to be completed by December 31st. But what it did is allowed state funds to be applied for resources that are needed at the educational level. Our school specifically has, like most schools, oriented towards personal PPE, so personal masks that we distributed to our students and our teachers. And although that was a minor cost or increase in cost overall, what it did for us as far as goodwill and reassurance, we couldn't pay for. I mean, there's no value to that. The other nice thing is we have student or school spirit masks with logo, and the students love to wear that and show their school spirit. Along with that same funding, we allocated some for other PPE, such as the sanitizer and the cleaning devices, and increase in their janitorial service. But one area that, and this is the whole presentation, I think, is we took a portion of that funds and put it towards behavioral health and helping our internal staff, and with the idea that if we could take care of our teachers and our staff, then they would be more skilled and prepared to assist students and the families. We have what we're doing is a hybrid situation. So we have families that don't have as much contact with the school as they usually would, but still have a deep need for emotional and social connections. It's usually in school we focus on educational aspects and support social and emotional. And this year it's almost the reverse, where we're putting a lot of our attention towards the emotional component and social, and then adding in the education through technology. And then with our A Day, B Day hybrid model, we're seeing the students as best that we can in the situation. Go ahead, Lynette.
Thank you, Evan. Thank you. Yeah, so there are some tools right there, some ways that Ammon School is looking at resilience and going through difficult times. Next slide, please. Thanks, Ammon. So there's a metaphor that we use for this cognitive shift of looking at like what is the golden mend, what is the silver lining. Some of you may have heard of kintsugi, the ancient Japanese pottery. The broken pottery is restored using this ancient technique, and it looks a bit like, next slide, this. They believe in this metaphor that the value and the beauty of the pottery is increased with a golden mend. And the word kintsugi actually translates from Japanese to English in a rough way to golden mend. So using this way of looking, this lens of looking at COVID and how it impacts our schools and our education. Go ahead. We know that we can look at it as well. It's broken, it's shattered. Our normal has been shattered. Is it to be discarded versus is it better and is it beautiful? And what are some things that we're learning? And maybe there is a golden man. Maybe there are silver linings in the clouds. Go ahead. So uh, these are some questions. Do we look at it as broken versus the golden man? Next. So, what we know about growth and recovery is that most people make it through emotionally difficult experiences. We have this thing called post traumatic stress disorder, or we can have post traumatic growth. And General Rhonda Cornum was a big advocate of that through the military. And the growth may be, we're really focusing on what matters most, and we're getting rid of all the clutter and just getting down to like, this is what really is important. And that could be part of the post traumatic growth. Go ahead. We know that these are just normal responses to abnormal events. Focusing on our strengths and abilities helps to heal us. Next. And that we have a shared humanity. We know about the stages of grief. And you think, well, COVID, yeah, we are experiencing grief. Grief in the loss of traditional classroom, grief in the loss of, wow, I used to be able to, oh, wow, I'm doing hybrid. Grief in the loss of just the norms that we once had. And I put a picture of a wave here because these things, the stages of grief, they really kind of hit us as a wave. And if you think, well, check box, okay, yeah, I already went through denial and shock, check. I've already been angry about it. Check. Moving on. Depression. Okay, I've already accepted it. Check those boxes. That's one paradigm for sure. But if you look at it as waves, like we're all hit by these waves, and sometimes the wave it hits us and it's crushing. But we know that as much as waves come in, they will also go back out. And so this is a very helpful metaphor as well. Go ahead. And we know that these are points of resilience, physical resilience. Are we sleeping? Are we looking at exercise? Are we still doing that? Are we going out for a 30-minute walk around our neighborhood? Are we, what are we doing on our mental and emotional resilience? And there's some ideas here. Paying attention to our thoughts. Are we journaling? Are we visiting even with a counselor? Next. And social resilience. Even though social contact has been limited in some ways, we can still have social resilience. I heard someone in the area of positive psychology, she was talking about, do we have um, social distancing, or is it we're physically distancing, but we're socially connecting? And I think that connection is so important. We know that sharing our sorrow decreases it and sharing our joy increases it. So the bottom line is, are you sharing? And next, are you caring for yourself? The one, are you putting the oxygen on yourself? And in doing so, that helps you to be more capable of helping others. And ultimately, are you noticing the golden men's? And with that, those are some of the critical questions for individuals. And then we're going to go to the school section. Ammon.
Yeah, thank you. So, in covering that, we covered what we can do as individuals and what we can do as individuals for each other. And our next portion is a case study, really, of what we did at our school, sharing our personal experience here at North Davis Preparatory Academy and how we've applied this information that Lynette shared with our faculty and staff. So, really quick, you see some of our demographics. What you don't see there is that as a dual language immersion, 60% of our students are full immersion in Spanish language, with about 40% that are doing exposure. And the way we accomplish that is 30% of our faculty are on visas rotating from Spain, native speakers, and they share their culture and their language with the students. What that also does is, as you've experienced the stress and anxiety of not being able to visit family during the holidays, we have some of our teachers that haven't been home for over a year and a half, or their visas have expired while COVID has been occurring, and they watch our political system. They watch the news from their home. So there's so many factors that at first we really weren't aware of and how they affected our faculty, and just the news cycle, the media. and then us caring about our fellow teachers. And so our American teachers are concerned and stressed on how our teachers are going to do. So these are some of the things that we started to look at in our demographics that weren't specified. So this is our situation. Just like yourself, we experienced a soft closure. At first, it was only 2 weeks, then it was extended to 1 month. And then after spring break, we were told from the governor's headquarters that the soft closure would go through the rest of the year. And we limped through, like many of you in education, using our online. We really weren't prepared. To be honest, we had just implemented Canvas, which is a LMS, earlier that year, and only two teachers had really started to use it. And so we were caught flat-footed, so to speak, not prepared for the sprint and the chase there in the spring. As we went into the summer, we got so many pieces of feedback from our teachers and families, our faculty and staff, government requirements. I think here in Utah, we were provided 3 templates. They changed throughout the summer, and I'm sure you experienced those same challenges. What that did for us is it created some stressors and lack of confidence across our faculty and our families for reopening. Um, it also created a lot of anxiety with our teachers on how they would be able to conduct, especially our lower grades. The elementary struggled to foresee and implement, and we still continue to be challenged by that. And that takes us to this case study of feeling overwhelmed and teachers often expressing an exhaustion. I was just talking to a teacher here about a week ago, and she and I both recognized that we go home so much more tired at the end of the day. And our theory is it's because we're wearing a mask, it's because of the novelty of the experience. And so we're using our thought and our energy to overcome challenges a lot more. And then we're still being active and engaged in the school. Our school, because of using the hybrid alternating A day, B day, has been able to maintain functionality despite several, I believe it's currently 5, of the local high schools having to shut down. So they opted to participate in school every day. Then once they hit the threshold by the Department of Health in our county, they'll shut down for 2 weeks and then they'll come back. And so they've been bouncing back and forth. And I have a daughter in high school, and it's really difficult to go see your friends, integrate, do school in the normal sense, and then have to go online and then come back. We've been fortunate with our model and have decided to stick with the hybrid where we reduce our numbers in class. We are able to social distance a little bit better and do the other factors that protect us. So our COVID mitigation has been amazing. We can't say the same for the outcomes in our grades, and also the way people feel when they're at school. There's still that sense of not being in control. So after about 45 days being in school, what we did is we identified our first professional development day as it would be a wellness and resiliency focus completely. Even though we've had some trouble with online and some of the other things, the recognition that we needed to address that for all faculty and staff. This was done by taking our day and cutting it into portions. It was a half day rather than a full day so that folks could just go home. And we released early. But that morning was dedicated to a 4-hour session where Lynette, as a clinical social worker, came in, provided psychoeducation to our large group via Zoom. And also, we social distance within our gym where people could participate. And that was really good because it attended to both parties, those that were concerned about health, those that felt that they wanted to come together but still be spaced. After her 1 hour psychoeducation piece, she remained on site and conducted on site and Zoom sessions. They were rapid, but they were very effective. Very short sessions. So there wasn't a diagnosis provided, but it was confidential. It was 15 to 20 minutes, and we had several of our faculty participate and staff. And that was a great start to how we proceeded. The follow on is we then followed on with sessions with Lynette as a clinical social worker in October, November, and December. So we've had quite a few respondents here are some of the participant comments that we've had from our faculty and staff, where they're demonstrating that they feel that they can reframe the situation, that they're able to focus more on a can versus a cannot. They understand, and we both realize things are not perfect, but we continue to grow. I love some of the examples that they're giving with their family, with themselves, with their students. We had more comments. And the reality is, it's not perfect. We continue to have ups and downs, personal situations here in our school. Also, the news plays a part in how all of us respond. But with the tools that we have been provided, we feel confident that we can continue forward. And so the way forward is, as an administration, as a school, we are working to identify how to not only reduce stress, but how to see that before it takes hold, and how to continue to solicit self-reports. We've been using a lot of surveys in our school. We're trying to get better and more effective, so we aren't just pushing surveys all the time. But what I've discovered is the one-on-one talks, doing some town hall Zooms, is another effective way to solicit and get reports from folks and how they're doing. And what we plan on doing is a mid-year evaluation and then a post-program assessment at the end of the year to evaluate how effective it was. Initial reports seem to be very positive. So just some resources. We teamed up with Alta Behavioral Counseling, and the program Alta Solutions is really something that we as a school and the counseling services are building as we go. So the 4-hour session with the follow-on sessions is essentially that, but there's also other programs or themes that could be added into that program as we continue. And they're a subsidiary and affiliated with Kenai Personnel Solutions, and we've got their website there. Also, the CDC provided quite a bit of good information on coping and managing stress and anxiety related to COVID. So that resource I hope you find helpful and can use. While we sometimes forget how resilient we are, if we look back at the past in our life, there are things that we have taken on the challenge and overcome. If we can care for one, we'll have the ability to care for all. We're all in this shared experience, and both Lynette, while she was serving as a counselor, was serving on military bases. That's actually how she and I met many years ago, and the realization that while some of us are warriors in the traditional sense, the reality is that we're all in the same fight together, and not all of us wear uniforms. And these are our constituents and our stakeholders that we're worried and want to facilitate their growth and development. So each warrior, that's each of us, can demonstrate and grow in fierce resilience. And we're grateful that you could attend, and thank you for your participation. I'm going to stop sharing and pass it off to Vivian, who will then share her and discuss her experience.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to share my screen as we get started. Just doing a little transition. Okay. Confirming, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Excellent. Yes. I have to start back at the beginning here. Okay. So we're going to just transition from like that micro level now and talk a little bit more about organization-wide, how we're caring for one is caring for all. So I'm Vivian Price, and I'm an assistant superintendent of education for Springs Charter Schools, and I'm here in San Diego. Our schools are across several Southern California counties. I'm happy to be here. So I'm going to share a little bit about how we're responding to this global pandemic and supporting staff, students, and their families. So during my time with you, I'm going to discuss several ways that we've connected as a community and strengthened our school culture, even while we're practicing remote instruction and working from home. So we understand that developing and maintaining a strong culture includes a focus on the social and emotional. And we've always, attended to that. But like it was pointed out by Lynette and Amon, we've kind of flipped to ensure that we're putting the social and emotional first, and then, you know, the academic second, actually. And that's been the mindset since March, when we first had to get the stay-at-home orders. And so the schools that I'm working for are not on site yet. So just keep that in mind as I share a little bit about what we've done. We have 18 small school sites, no more than around 700 students. That's the largest, and 200 or 300 in the smallest. We have 2 sites that are back at school. So 2 sites that are doing a hybrid program during this time. So there are many people who have been home for over 8 months. I myself have not seen many of my staff members live in over 8 months. So we've really had to do a lot with caring for each individual in order to maintain a strong school culture organizationally. So of course, you heard the discussion about how the COVID pandemic is creating elevated stress. Everybody here probably is experiencing some of that for themselves. And, you know, there's things to do to mitigate some of the effects of stress. So in our district, we have responded to our community needs by ensuring that our staff and students are not only surviving, but actually thriving. So as I describe some of these strategies, I hope that something will resonate with you, and you'll be able to, there'll be something there for you to consider. So first of all, like I mentioned, we put, sorry, it's a little bouncy, we put people first. And we focus on relationships. And so we did that in several ways, including by providing new and appropriate professional development. Because in March, 8 months ago, you know, we came into a very new time, an uncertain time. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that momentarily. And I'm going to share some ways that we have been supporting the social and emotional needs of not only our students, but our staff and parents. Okay, so first, before we could do anything, we had to adjust to this new normal. And I focus a little bit on the timely professional development because we did not close school. So on March 13th, between the 13th and the 18th, we made a decision to stay open, but have distance learning. And many of the school districts around us in California did not do that. So schools halted all instruction and even interaction with students during the time of trying to figure out what to do. Our school felt that we were a little bit ahead of the curve in terms of being ready. We were already using an online management system like Amon mentioned. They had just started with Canvas, but we felt relatively prepared. But in some schools more than others, because we have some hybrid programs, but we also have 5-day programs where there's not very much at-home instruction being provided, you know, other than homework and practice. So here we have parents who will now be at home with their students, staff who will be all teaching from home. And so within that first week, so we went to the stay-at-home orders across the state, and then within a week, our leadership team created on-demand and live training starting from, well, the on-demand was available 24 hours, but we started training at about 8 a.m. and extended into the evening hours so that we could strengthen the capacity of our teachers. Because when you are not feeling competent about the job that you're being expected to do, then that's just going to increase that burden and increase that level of stress. And so if our teachers aren't putting their oxygen mask on first, they will not be able to provide for their students. So this professional development focused on flipping a classroom, using the distance learning tools. We went very small to just like using Google Docs, turning them into HyperDocs, all the way to like, really flipping your classroom with tools like Pear Deck. And so we had something for every level of proficiency in terms of our teachers. And I would say that this is something that any school could do, because we also curated already developed resources, but we just organized them on a nice schedule so that a teacher could just click onto the schedule and see, oh, I'm going to watch one of these webinars, at my leisure in the evening. So that was really important to us. We've continued to provide professional development. Also, we focused on engaging students through connection as a priority. So we called students daily if we didn't see them in the Zoom meetings. We have Zoom, Big Blue Button, and Google Meet. So we had a variety of options for meeting. We sent out surveys and talked to parents about devices, because we did not have every student with a device, although we do now, 8 months later, very proud to say. So we just prioritized morning meetings, and we set up schedules throughout the day where students could have one-to-one meetings. And we were able to do that without absolutely draining our teachers by using all the staff members, because nobody was going to the site. So we looked at, well, what can we do with our aides and our special ed teachers and even our classified staff? And so we were able to organize for small groups and one-to-one instruction in that way. And we sent lots of communication and words of encouragement. You can see on the right here, these are our teachers at one of our sites sending out a message to their students. These are all our students. So that was the new normal, getting people ready for that. Now, in terms of our parents and students, I'm going to talk a little bit about that and share some of the bigger across the organization things we did beyond the professional development. So we made it through the last year, and really just like I said, I really focused on the social and emotional. And then, as we came back to school in late August, now we have an expectation from the state really to also be focused on academics. So again, if you don't have people emotionally prepared, it's hard to learn. So we've learned through the ups and downs of running charter schools that we need to strengthen our community in order to strengthen our culture. So now we're in this unusual time where we're not face to face. So we really looked at ways to support across the district. And so in terms of the social emotional and preparing people to be able to be in a space for learning, we did several things. So over the summer, we implemented what was called the Summertime Chatter Camp. And this was for students, and it was very successful. And this was run by our school counselors. And so what they did is arrange a 7-week schedule where they had online fun and games, but also safe space to just talk about how students were doing with their social and emotional over the summertime. And so that was really successful. It provided a point of contact in a safe virtual space to connect and have fun. And it was offered, all week for seven weeks. When we came back to school, we decided that we were going to try to still maintain some of our signature events and rituals and routines that we do that are an important part of developing a culture. And so I'll share a little bit about that. But we started with an annual focus on heroes. So earlier, you saw the Amon mentioned warriors, and they don't all wear uniforms. And we have kind of followed that same idea, but we called them, reference them as heroes. And heroes we also are using to stand for headway every day in relationships and outcomes. So our annual focus is on making headway every day in relationships and also outcomes. And that's the academic side. And so with that in mind, we want our annual theme to reinforce that idea that every single day you have to do something to develop and support and maintain your relationships. So like take, for example, my relationships, are the leadership staff that I'm caring for and the principals. This weekend, I spent time writing thank you notes and sending them out to all of my staff. So I'm working on maintaining my relationships every day. So we have the school-wide focus. I'm going to click here to show you, and hopefully this is going to work. We developed a variety of tools for staff and parents. So each month we have a theme that falls under that hero idea. Also very easy to put together because we used Google Sites in order to do this. So here I'll show you, this is a, oops, that did not work for you guys, actually. It will, one moment. I'm going to share a different site. Okay, as I share this with you, what you're going to see is a Google site that's developed for our families that shares a variety of resources. And so the theme for September, which you should be able to see now.
It looks great.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, so this was our September theme where we focused on the grass is green where you water it. So that goes along that same idea of, put your oxygen mask on first. And with that, we were able to, we focused on sharing resources for building habits academically. So one of our goals is increasing reading volume. So scroll through that. Also goal setting, and then here it is at the bottom, we have that self-care. So for all of our families, each month, depending on the theme, they will have additional resources. And then without taking you over to the staff, you'll have the slide deck and you can have those links later. Again, pretty easily done with our slides. And you can see in October, the theme was let's root for each other and help each other grow. So that's been an important part of developing a culture for us, actually, is just that idea of having school-wide themes and things that sort of bring people together. So I'm going to get back to my PowerPoint. So it's a little quick switcheroo here. All right. Okay. Can you?
Looks good.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So
We can see it.
Okay, great. I appreciate that feedback. We also developed so the Bitmoji classrooms, for counselors. So we have resources. I'm not going to click on those at this moment, but our websites share a variety of tools for parents and staff to use at home. And then we also put into place something called our daily mindful moments. And what this is each day we have a 15-minute session that is for teachers, and it's run by one of our principals who also has a real gift. She's done a lot of work with mindfulness and meditation, and so she hosts a 15-minute from 7:45 to 8 daily mindful moment. And anybody across the school can log on, sort of gets your head right for the day, and she does a meditation, sometimes a reading, offers a daily affirmation, also an easy strategy that could be implemented, but shows, we're taking the time every day to strengthen relationships and show that, we know that it's important. And we know that our teachers are actually, it's suffering and, working through because they're resilient, but this has been a tough time. Okay. So another thing that we did is we tried to take, like I said, our practices online. And so every year we host an annual conference where we're usually face-to-face. And this is important because we're spread out. So this is like the district-wide coming together. So this year, we used a tool much like the one that we're meeting on today, and we still had our conference, but we just made sure it fit the online platform, so things were a little shorter. We tried to stay really positive, and we had 1,000 staff members get online in a Zoom conference, and our theme was heroes, and we had a keynote speaker, but mostly we tapped into our own resources and offered little breakout sessions with our own staff. So teachers helped pragmatic little how you can do it, get it done workshops. So there I am in my superhero uniform. And so this was something that was great. We also have continued to offer for our students virtual events. We had the spelling bee virtually. We curated a variety of virtual field trips. So our parents can just go through our website. We've had for our high school students a career speaker series. Just last week, we had a writing event. So we had our English teachers sponsor a writing competition, and they did a little kickoff that was available to students across the school through a Zoom meeting. So that's been really important to try to maintain some of those social things, events, academic experiences that are an important part of schooling for kids. I mentioned that we started with developing our teachers with additional professional development, but we also did establish expectations for distance learning, because we believe that, when you're clear about expectations, but also flexible, it's comforting. So people didn't know what to do. Should I be online for 10 minutes, 20 minutes? Do I take my exact classroom experience and replicate it online? Which the answer to that is no. And so we created new expectations that said things like, most important, connect with your students, only offer 15 minutes of actual direct instruction, and it should include interaction. So things like that. And we actually printed those, sent them out to everybody, reviewed, and created MOUs for our parents. Okay, so then I want to just take the last 2 minutes and mention those silver linings or the golden men's, because although so many great things have happened, it's easy to focus on the negatives when you have been home, when you're a teacher trying to school your own children and teach all day. Leaders are working from home, trying to run schools. And so we realized that there are the golden men, and there are silver linings, but it's important to express those. To try to get, the mindset for everybody in that right space. And so at our we had a school-wide part 2 of our conference, October 31st. And during that session, our superintendent shared the many silver linings that she recognized as a result of the pandemic. And we gave out awards and really celebrated some of the things that people have done. And so one of the things that we recognize is gratitude. So during this time, gratitude has really increased for our colleagues, for our school, just for the ability to maintain our jobs and have this flexibility. We are really grateful that as a charter school, we were well prepared to meet these challenges. Because as charter, quite frankly, we're called on to always be innovative. And now, in our communities, it was realized by others that what we knew all along, which is that school doesn't just have to happen in the classroom, and that is part of our mission and vision. And so we were really able to show, even through those examples I just shared about using the community in the online setting, that you can still continue to progress and thrive outside of traditional classroom walls. So The next thing is generosity, and I think many of you will agree there has been so much generosity given during this time. People have shared their skills, their talents, curriculum content with each other. They've banded together to form babysitting co-ops and school-wide, and so on a national level, we've been able to, generously provide also. And so the last one would be there has been the gift of time for some people. We've been able to, we haven't commuted as much. We've been able to spend time thinking about relationships. Some of us have developed new hobbies and strengthened our professional skills. So we've really focused on there is the sense of time that we have had back. And so I hope that you're also finding those silver linings in the golden men's. And so at this time, we're able to take a few questions. So if we have people, we'll use the chat feature. If we have anyone in the audience who wants to ask questions of the three of us, thank you. So I will stop sharing. Okay.
One question, Vivian, I don't know if we were able to talk about it in our coordination, is I just wrote down some of the resources that you had mentioned, but seeing it really made it real. Are you able or willing to share those? And if so, how would you share those?
Absolutely. I can share. I mean, anybody could email me. I could stick that in the chat, and then I can maybe I'll just put together a Bitly, and then I'll have a link, and so I'll pop in some of the resources. In particular, I can put in, our expectations. We did create what we called non-negotiables. Again, that's things like it's not negotiable that you check in every day on students who are missing or what have you. So I can share things like that, links to our counselor. The Bitmoji classrooms are pretty cute. And
Okay.
our training schedule. Is there anything else in particular that you think would be good to share?
I think that's good. I see a question by Chris. So, Lynette, do you have some ideas? You're going to have to unmute, I think, before you share.
Okay, can you hear me now? Okay, great. The question from Chris is, what would you suggest could be done to support staff more mentally and emotionally virtually? I think it's sometimes it's like I've also done this and heard of this in another setting other than I'm in school, but just like a weekly newsletter of like, hey, here are some resilience tips. Here are some resilience tips for the week that uh, help people get that oxygen on them individually. Vivian addressed that, like teachers are stressed, and if you don't have the oxygen on yourself, and then we're less effective in helping others. But I think that sometimes that comes through psychoeducation, um, and just putting some words out there as far as like, hey, you know what, here's the golden men for the week, here's a gratitude moment. Did you know that gratitude increases our wellness and health by X amount? And hey, here's what we know about the holidays upcoming. I mean, it doesn't even have to be school related, but just human related. Like, we're humans, we walk this path. But like, here's some things that we know about holiday stressors. And I think your school counselors have access to those issues. You can link back to Vivian. Obviously, she has resources there, but Ammon as well, and the resources that he addressed, and looking into those websites that are there, it gives some great ideas for it. I think that connecting, mentally and emotionally virtually. I mean, Vivian talked about doing that with the kids, having that. I wrote it down, Vivian, the summertime chatter count. But maybe it's utilizing tech in these ways and saying, hey, you know what, we've got a 15-minute teacher check-in or staff check-in where here's our moment, and just talking. What are some of your challenges today? Because that idea of sorrow shared is half sorrow. When we get it out, when we release that, it just kind of like, whoo, it frees us up of holding it. And like I might share, oh my gosh, I'm so stressed today because of A, B, and C. And Emma can say, yeah, you know what? That's a stressor we're having too. I have that too. Or Vivian might say, I'm not feeling that stressed today, but I sure felt it last week, but it helps us feel like, oh, I'm not the only one feeling this. So those can be helpful ways to add in the emotional and social resilience for teachers and for staff.
Yeah, can
Those are
I
some
just
thoughts for
add
me.
something to that also, Lynette?
Yeah.
So one of the things that I think has been, I don't know, it seems to work, it's at least insightful or eye-opening, is we've had a lot of discussion, so kind of led by our people services departments, of having leaders express their own vulnerability or, feelings of stress, like to give permission to others. And that takes, you have to be willing to be vulnerable. Like, our assistant superintendent of pupil services has been in meetings with the entire leadership team and said, I've had days, like you mentioned, where like I didn't want to get out of bed, but then the next day, I felt I was uplifted by my staff. So that's, just being vulnerable and transparent. I think that that's important. But also, as a leader, maintaining that sense of we got you. But then the other thing is we really have focused on doing fun things. Like you mentioned, what about having 15 minutes with the staff? So we share best practices, like before every meeting, take 10 minutes. And so something that people have been using a lot of is like a Padlet or a Jamboard, and saying things like, okay, first 10 minutes, put your the best meme that represents 2020. You get a good laugh before you start. Say something you're grateful for. Find your silver lining. I only had one person. I did do that in a meeting, and one person said that I have no silver lining. And that was really, we had to kind of
But
deal.
that's an indicator. But that's also an indicator of like they're really struggling, and so
Really
that might be a time
struggling.
to reach out to that person offline and say,
Yep.
"Hey, what can we do? How can we better support you?"
Yep.
I'm
Exactly.
I'm noticing that Seba put Onward by Elena Aguilar is an amazing book for building emotional resilience in educators specifically. I think that's valuable. And a word about vulnerability. Most of you are probably familiar with Brené Brown and her work. She's a social worker from University of Houston, but I haven't memorized because I use a lot of her information. But she says that vulnerability is the place where we can find greater connectedness, greater love, greater acceptance, greater belongingness. All these things are good, but it's very scary to get vulnerable too. But the outcomes, and actually research-based outcomes, are there's greater belongingness and greater acceptance. And that's what we're really seeking in these times, is a sense of belongingness that we've lost through face-to-face connection, but that we can still get virtually through a screen as well. I mean, it looks like Nicole Handy said, please share your website link. I love the resource page on
Yeah,
your
I
website.
captured the names of those that have requested, and so that we can
Okay.
follow up, because I know Vivian had some great resources. We had some listed.
Yeah.
Real quick, I was just going to comment, and both of you have stated that, and sometimes it's so obvious that it's difficult to recognize. But I believe the question of how can we do this virtually is really similar to how we would do it one-on-one, face-to-face. And it comes down to recognizing this is a difficult situation, and the way I react may be a little different, and just listen. And I think that just makes a big difference, and it goes from there. So I appreciate that question, and also that you will get. I've had that experience. Some negative comments, and you have to roll with it because that's their reality, and that's okay. And I think sometimes that's even a test of, can I really share what's stressing me out, or are you going to react poorly? Um, and when they do that, and if you can handle that, or say that is way above my pay grade, here's a resource that's could be a lifeline. So I think it's one of those two things that each of us need to have the resource ready to go, or be the resource. And that goes back to that putting the mask on ourselves, because we can't do it all, but we certainly can share what's helped us, or what can help them. So excellent questions. I notice we have about 4 minutes left. So if there's any other questions before we get timed out.
I have a question for the viewers. We can't see you through this platform, or at least I can't. But if you have I attended a session earlier today, and the presenter said, give it to us in a word. If you had one word that you could part on, what would it be? And you can put that in the comment sections. What did you learn, or what's one word that you take from this? I'm very interested to see some of your words. And I would ask that to you, Vivian. One word to part on, what would it be? And Ammon, one word to part on, what would it be? Just to give you an idea, some of the words that I heard in the earlier session were like fearless, resilient, fight, whatever that might be. What's the one word that kind of captures where you're at the end of this session with us today?
I mean, I would just say connected again, because,
Yeah.
it doesn't even need to be explained. I would just say connected.
Yeah, totally. I love it. Yeah.
Also, the recording is, or the presentation is recorded, so everybody will have, for those that might have been in and out, you'll have it all.
Right. Does the word come to mind for you, Ammon? I know I'm asking you to like totally oversimplify, but
There's some.
if you see them, Ammon, could you read them aloud?
One came
Hope.
up was hope, thankful.
Nice. I love that. Brave. Save a thanks. Yeah. I think my word kind of goes with Seba's brave, but it's warrior. Like we are warriors. We really are. And that little boy with his hand on his heart, in our slideshow, like we're warriors, and it doesn't matter what age, and it doesn't matter what clothing we're wearing. But we're warriors, and we're brave. Present. I see that, Stephen. Thank you. Present. Nice. Yeah. Ammon, did you have a parting word?
No, I'm just grateful
I'm
we hit
coming
our
back
time.
at
We have
you.
good participation, and I'm looking forward to the next sessions, to be honest. Uh,
Super.
I've been having a delightful time. I might do more virtual conferences. Get to stay home and still meet everybody.
Yeah, it's nice. Well, I think our time is spent. I just want to say thank you to everyone, and thank you, Vivian and Ammon. It's been a pleasure to present with you today, and yeah, we go forward with fierce resilience and with this strength. So that's it from me. Thank you, guys.
All right.
Yeah, likewise.
Thanks.
Thank you, Lynette. Thank you,
Take
Anna,
care.
who came in.